Hello from the Hashknife. Well, I'm going to take you on a little odyssey over the next probably 60 days or so. And what that odyssey is how we feed out a butcher animal. And we're going to do just one, follow her. It's a heifer that did not show she was pregnant when we did our preg tests in November. So instead of just selling her as an open heifer, then we went ahead and held her through the winter, fed her up, kept her feeding with the other cows. And now it's time to put a green finish on her so that she has some good marbling, some overall fat on the outside of her muscle and underneath the hide, and gains a little bit more muscle as well. She'll be a good chunk of meat for somebody. Fill their freezer, and we're going to show you how we do that. Not all that scientific. This is pretty low key here because it's just a single solitary animal. It's not like a big feedlot. So we'll just kind of show you what we do. Well, feeding is not a cost negative or even cost flat type proposition. What you're seeing here is what she will be eating in this pallet over about the next 60 days, like I said, and in addition to all the hay she wants to have. And then we'll keep increasing how much she has. What ration daily will increase at different times, but here's to show you, we've got steam-rolled cob. COB stands for corn, oats, and barley. And it's got a little molasses in it for some sweetener. It helps them a little bit of palatability, and it actually sweetens, has a kind of a sweeter taste to the meat. And it just shows the guaranteed analysis of this, and that you just feed with your already portioned hay or silage or whatever you have for them. Really easy stuff to feed up. You just got to be a little careful with it that you don't feed too much too fast. So I'm going to scoop out using a coffee can, and I've actually kind of weighed this up a little bit and pour in, to begin with, just a small ration. This is what she gets for the day, once a day right now, and get her used to eating this. And no, you don't get any. I know you'd love some, but sorry, pal. This is not for you. We don't care for the taste of horse, especially a horse that makes more horses. That would be foolish. So we'll put this in here. We'll bring her up, and I'm going to hide this in my little makeshift alley here for the barn. So the horse didn't get to it because, yeah, they're opportunists too. So I'll go bring her up after I've got these horses in another pen, and we'll let her just eat alone on her own and tank up. She's already looking like, hey, what do you got? She knows what a white bucket is. All right, we're going to get to know 122 pretty well. And over the course of the next couple of months. So let's get her in up here. Come on, baby. Let's go. Put her in up there and let her eat. Now I'm taking a little chance doing this alone. A lot of times they don't want to leave their buddies. I just don't blame them. But pretty soon she's going to get used to this, where she'll see me walk out and she'll come over because she knows there's some good stuff in that white bucket. She already saw me walk out with it, so she knows there's probably something up here waiting for her. We got her in here, a little tight place, and I'm going to take this bucket and we'll just throw that in there and see what she does. Give her a little bit of time. She'll find it, nose it around a little bit, and she'll consume that. Come on. And this is kind of stressful for her at first here because she doesn't know what's going on. Not done this before. So it's a matter of getting her tuned up. I got her in this little bit of an alley here where I dropped the grain and stuck it in that feeder. And she's going to take a lick and maybe go, I'm not sure. So she knows it's there. Obviously, she'd have found it anyway. We're just going to leave her alone, and I'll watch her for a little bit, and I might turn her out in this bigger corral until she's consumed that. You got to kind of teach her to eat this stuff. It's different than what she's had. She's used to pellets, so there'll be a little bit of a transition behaviorally in her noggin. Once she gets a little bit of a taste of that, she's going to like it. I turned her out a little bit ago, and she's settling down a tiny bit. Brought this feed out here. She has been pushing this around a little bit, and she's been chewing on it. Yeah, she's got about 2/3 of it gone, so that's a good thing. She's got to start. We're wanting to do a little bit of a comparison, and you'll notice between her front legs up high where her neck meets, it's called a brisket. And that brisket is going to get thick. It looks like like a big grapefruit, a little bit bigger than that underneath there right now, underneath the skin, the bottom of the wattle. And we want to watch that, and it'll increase in size as she feeds up and gets bigger and thicker. And you'll notice her back is fairly flat. There's a lot of meat or muscle on the top of that back, and she's fairly wide. You notice her flank. See how it just kind of that flap of skin is there? That's going to fill out as well, and you're going to see a bunch of fat deposit there, which will move ahead of that hind leg. You can't see her ribs. Right now, she's fed up on grass and hay, so she's done really well that way. And we're going to watch her hind end here as she goes by. I'll get behind her, and you can see how on either side of her hind end, it's kind of flat. She's got some good muscling there, but it's kind of flat, and that will round out as well. And notice how close her hind legs are together. As she gains weight and thickens up, she should start to get a wider and wider stance, and then to support that extra weight on her as she gets some more marbling inside the meat and, of course, gains more muscle. Now, you'll notice her feet. See above her dew claws there, especially on the hind? You'll notice that that's fairly trim. What we want to do is we're going to give her some cankles. And you'll notice that that will fatten up a little bit, thicken up, and she'll get a little bit of deposition of fat along those ankles towards the end, and we'll give that comparison maybe the last day. But we might take a peek at her from time to time. You notice the top of her hip where it meets the tail. It's kind of got a slope to it. It's not flat like the top of her back is. But we're going to watch that fill out as well. And then the end of her hip will get wider, of course. There's no rib, like I said before, that you can see. She's good and healthy. She's a nice sized cow. And she will just plain old thicken up, get big, and we will like what we see, and they'll like what they taste. Well, we're about halfway through our feeding schedule here on this heifer, and we're going to just take a look at a few of her changes. Notice that brisket is getting much, much wider and rounder, a little thicker, and she looks pretty good. See the flank. See how it's, instead of just pushing some of that flank skin ahead of the leg there, there's a kind of a lighter spot, and it's going to move significantly. You can see the fat start to push forward, and her hind end is looking a little better. She's getting some roundness to her and thicker, a little wider stance as well. That back line, obviously she didn't have any ribs showing. That point of that hip is getting a little bit more round as she puts on more weight, and she's kind of curious. And she knows that I represent some food, so when I come out in the morning and she's bedded down, she stands up and we'll walk this way and get her chow. Now, I started calling her Cankles, because that's what we're going to try to do, is give her some cankles. And you'll notice that just above her dew claw, how that is starting to thicken up a little bit as well. It's kind of muddy, hard to see, but you can see below the dew claw, that whole area is going to have some fat deposition as well. And kind of looking forward to that. You can see some of the corn, oats, barley in the fecal matter there. See if we can get her to move off just a little bit. And look at her, how wide she's holding her legs. Now to hold her weight up, start spreading that out just a little bit. Because she's turned, she's got herself kind of locked up a little bit on this hind end. There we go. And she's more interested in me than anything else, which makes it a little tough to get a shot here on the hind end. Straight out. You can see again, watch that flank. You see a little bit of rippleness, I like to call it, when she moves. And come on, baby. Come on, let's move. Certainly not fearful, but she's playful. This is cool in the morning. Little snort there. A little bit better. And I don't expect her to get super, super heavy because she's active and moving around. And not gonna get a super porky weight because she's grass fed and then finished with grain. So she's not gonna be super, super lean, but she's gonna have some really good marbling and some thickness. You can see that hind end again is starting to round out a little bit instead of being as flat as it was to begin with. Now, one of the things we want to look for is her appetite. It's kind of a maintenance thing. How does she eat? Is she eating all of her feed up? And I've gradually increased. You start them out slow and gradually increase them to what I like to have as a maximum amount per day. So you feed them once a day, a few pounds at a time so they get used to it. It doesn't cause any stomach upset. And then slowly increase that up. Then you start feeding them twice a day. Back off that daily ration and split it into a morning and evening type feeding so that it's really consistent. And then you watch them. Weather changes will make them come off their feed a little bit. So you got to kind of watch that. The other thing you're looking for is she had this poop pile over here. And it's just sloppy, just a normal cow patty. Again, here we are. We're watching their poop and pee all the time. But if you get a condition called acidosis because you've overfed or got too much carbohydrate dumped basically into their gut, and it causes it a little bit more acidic type of condition inside the gut, and it starts to kill some of the flora and fauna in there, then it's called acidosis. And it is just that. It's an acidic condition, and you will make them sick, or they'll make themselves sick, and they'll get a very, very runny, almost watery type diarrhea and not want to eat. They'll be sick, as you would expect with a stomach ache. And so you just have to back their feed off and correct that condition in a few days if you catch it early, and watch them, twice a day. You'll catch that very, very quickly. So one of the things you're looking for, you never want to get to that point. So you're always kind of watching ahead of time too, that your consumption is where you want it. You're not overdoing it. Cracked corn is very good for weight gain. The barley is got a real high carbohydrate dump within the first couple of hours after consumption, and so that can be problematic. And then the oats doesn't do a lot, except for, as our vet put it, that's something we've just always traditionally fed because it's relatively inexpensive in our part of the area, and so it just gives them a little bit of variety. But your corn and your barley are your main components of your feedstock there. That's going to be important for your weight gain, getting those carbos into them. They're not meat eaters, so they're not taking a lot of protein, but they're making protein out of that carbos. And having them nice and stress-free like this, there's other cows right here, but I separate her to feed because she is the only one we're feeding right now. That'll change in the fall. We'll have several of them that will feed up and be ready, but having them content, not stressed, is very, very important. And you can see she's, very calm. She does like to play. She'll buck and kick and stuff when you come out in the morning, especially when it's nice and cool. And that tells you they're feeling good. And a happy cow will be a tasty cow. Here's some cob for her.
Okay. Yeah, I can give her that tonight.
Give her tonight, and I don't care. Maybe I don't know how Tyler does that. If
they're a little goofy, he usually tries to just sneak right up on them. That way they don't.
Because if she eats tonight, she might just eat that, and while she's eating, that's what we've done it before.
Okay.
It's kind of sneak on them, but to explain to Kale and her group what's going on is normally we can bring these guys in, and she's been really, really calm for me. After I got her initially started to feed, we've seen how she is, and but today, now that she knew she was coming in, or apparently sensed it or got a telegram or something, candygram that said, hey, tomorrow might be the last day you live. So it's hard to get anything on film, but she's really filled out on that. She started out with a brisket about the size of a grapefruit. I think it's up there about the size of a good cantaloupe now.
She looks good. Well, and heifers are always a lot easier to fatten.
They are, yeah.
Than steers are.
Yep, so we've gone, this is, let's see, tomorrow is day 60 with her, and I've given her cob, warmed her up to 10 pounds in the morning, 10 pounds at night. So she's had a lot of, and all the good, she got good, really good, like almost dairy quality alfalfa. And so she had a little bit of grass hay, and of course, you know, she's raised on grass, but she's really filled out. Her back is nice and flat. Her hind end her stance has gotten wider, you know, because she's starting to get more weight on her. So it's been kind of fun to watch her mature and fill out. So all that yellow fat's now turned to white fat, I'm sure. So she should be tender.
To make it stay nice and pretty, we like a little bit more.
Well, you need a little bit of that protective covering, right? Yeah. Especially when you're cooking it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he likes peas. He likes peas and wheat.
But does that get the sweetness?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it adds much flavor.
Okay. He gains weight, but it's not not much marbling.
Muscle, no, not really.
No kidding.
It's really, I mean, it's a lot of meat. And so so I'll be curious to see what he does next year.
Because you know, I mean, it's no cob in there. That's what we're doing we're doing wet cob, or you know, with the molasses in it, and just being consistent. Yeah, is the main thing, I think, and keeping them content and happy takes a big deal. Yeah,
that's pretty much in the little pen, but then the other thing too with the little pen, you know, if they don't get exercise, they don't build muscle.
Right.
So that's right. Kind of, a lot of people just feed them, and it's like, they gain. I mean, it's like a human.
Right.
You eat a lot, you don't move a bunch, you have more fat than you do muscle, but if you move a lot, then you gain that muscle. And
that's what we like to do, is because they can move. You know, they've got some ranging. We can kick them out if we want to, but you know, I was having her up with a bunch of calvy heifers, and that worked out just fine this winter, or this early spring, feeding her up. And then I had to keep another dry with her to keep her content. They say they do feed better in two. Mm-hmm. Yep, I think so. I mean, anytime one of them's alone, I mean, that's a stressor for them, because they're not like us. There's some of us that shouldn't be around people anyway. But you know, there's some cob for her. And just let me know what her dressed weight is, and that way I can bill them, and we're good to go. Perfect. Sounds good. Yeah, get a hold of Robin and I'll even pick it up and deliver it for them. That's okay. You know, they're pretty close, so I can do that. Pretty good people, yeah. But okay, all right. I called her Cankles. I was trying to make her get some fat on those lower limbs at least, or she looks like she's got cankles. So she's doing all right. I think she'll be fine. No. So we just got here to drop off this heifer, and normally we back into these holding pens here, and just put them in, and they hold them for the night, kind of settle them down. They like to do it the evening before, and I agree. Give them a little bit of a chance to get used to their surroundings here, and it just calms them. I always bring in some of this cob that you see, and give them enough to feed again another feeding tonight, and then one in the morning. And a lot of times I'll ask them to just feed them and go ahead and harvest them or kill them while they're eating. And they're calm, they're used to it, some of the same old thing, but she's a little bit wild because of all of the activity that's going on. So instead of putting her in here and letting her run around, they opted to ask if we would put her into this holding trailer, which is safe for her. She's not going to get herself beat up or hurt or anything like that. And so we were going to film her out here so you could see, you know, how flat her back is, how her hind end is filled out, we call her Cankles for a reason. She's got some thick ankles on her. And that brisket is large now. It's almost the size of maybe like a cantaloupe. And as you heard Tori say, she looks good. So she's thick, she's heavy, she's not overly fat, but that muscle has been developed. And then we have asked her through this feeding to exchange that yellow fat from grass-fed or grass-fed up to that point to more grain, so that they are on forage, but at the same time they're eating more and more of this corn, oats, and barley with molasses in it, to turn that yellow fat into white fat for some marbling, some tenderness. And these heifers they tend to really feed up really easily, nicely, and you'll get a lot of a good meat, but a lot of tender meat out of them, and some good marbling. So hopefully she'll have a good chunk of meat that they'll provide to this family, and they'll enjoy her for maybe the next year. Thanks for coming along with us for this little 60-day jaunt.